the last question, number 6, is, should I do interviews or talk mainly about chiropractic or health topics? So the podcasts that I do see, that chiropractors do, I feel like they talk a lot about chiropractic and health, and I just don't know if people are that interested in it. So for me, like I'm trying to think of a good example, like a good analogy of like my brand. I feel like a lot of the value that comes from this podcast are the interviews with other people. So I feel like I try to do a pretty good job of putting myself in the position of the listener and trying to trying to pull things out that I would want to know if I was listening. And I try to think about it the way I was back at this point in my career, or this point in my career, or where I'm at now, so that it's not always, because a lot of the people that I interview, I already know them and I already know some of the answers to the questions, but it's more about the people that that are listening, that I'm trying to pull value out for them. It's not always information that I want to know because I may already know it. Right. So I think a lot of the value is bringing on other experts onto this. If it was just always me talking about, content creation or marketing, or like, there would be some people that might be interested in it, but I think that it helps because I have different types of content that we do for the podcast. I think that helps with, the variety of it helps attract different audiences. Right. The interviews also allow you to, it allows you to network with other people. It also allows you access to groups that you may not have been privy to otherwise. So being able to interview all of these people that I have, when we post it, I'm usually pretty good about like thanking them for their time and tagging them in the comments. And then sometimes they share it, and so that opens up me to their audience. And I'm terrible at it. I'm not even that good. Like when I'm interviewed on podcasts, they're always asking me like, hey, do this, and this. And I'm awful about it in terms of like telling them what they should do. It's like, if they want to share it, that's great. That's awesome. But if they don't, it's like, I don't like tell them that they should or shouldn't do it. So, but the interviews I think are really valuable. I do think that I still think that a lot of people would listen to this just because chiropractors, there's a certain subset that really are interested in marketing and content and all of that. So I do think that I could get listeners if that's all I ever talked about and if it was just me. But as a chiropractor, I just don't know if there's enough people out there that really care a lot about chiropractic and about, how chiropractic helps with this condition and that condition. And that's the real trick, is that when you're talking about specific conditions, if somebody does listen to your podcast and they just don't have that condition, they're not interested in talking about it. So what I like for a local podcast is either to basically just be like, a podcast where you interact with other influencers in the community, and or pick a specific avatar, like, moms or CrossFit athletes or triathletes, or like whatever your like ideal patient is. And then everything is built around the things that they want to learn about. So like my podcast is built around chiropractors that want to grow $1 million practice. Now, sometimes that's about marketing, but other times that might be about mindset. Like, I don't really talk that much about mindset, but I know that that's like when I bring on Fred DiDomenico or Patrick Gentempo, they're going to talk more about who you are as a person than like tactics to move forward through the stages of growing $1 million practice. So I try to think of, all right, if I'm, in that first stage, that 0 to 250, who do I want to hear from? At 250 to 500, who do I want to hear from? 500 to $1 million, who do I want to hear from? Over $1 million, who do I want to hear from? And I try to find people at different, like chiropractors at different stages to interview, so that so that everybody can get value out of it. And but my market, the avatar that I'm looking for, is somebody who's trying to grow a practice. Like, Not that growing $1 million practice is the end all be all of your life as a chiropractor, but those are like my ideal clients, the ones that are looking to grow. So that's where I'm going to think about what type of content either I should create or people that I should interview. So I would not recommend doing a podcast just around chiropractic. I would do a podcast if you do want to stay focused in on like, you're going to be the person who's creating all the content and doing all the talking, then I would think of an avatar and I would create content for that avatar versus, because there is no avatar of like people that are dying to know more about chiropractic. Like that just doesn't exist at a large enough number to make it worth your time. But there are enough people in your area that do CrossFit. There are enough moms in your area to make it worth it. So you want to make it relevant to that avatar. So hopefully this helped with some of the so kind of like how I think about the different types of content that's out there. You've probably heard me if you've listened to this podcast very much, is just start getting it done. Like just start doing it, because what I have found is, take my brand, for example, the 𝐷r Nick brand. So I've had the agency, which is a content marketing agency for chiropractors, since January 1st, 2017. So it's been a little bit over 3 years now. And I must have met, I bet I've met with my team 20 times about getting started with the content, but I always made it always had to be, because I'm just kind of a perfectionist like this, I had to do all of it to get started. So what ended up happening is I didn't get started. So we kept talking about it and talking about it and talking about it and meeting about it and wasting time about it. And then finally, we had the Gary Vee interview, and I was like, that's going to be the thing that I'm going to use as my excuse to get started. We got started. I committed to a daily podcast. So I was like, okay, we got to figure out how to make content every day. So I came up with the different types of content. And now it's like, we're doing it. We still haven't we're still perfecting it. We've gotten better with like the equipment or the setup or how I travel with things so that I can get more content when I'm away from Chicago. But also the content itself has kind of evolved, because I'm like, oh, I think this would be better this way or that way. We're just now going to start adding the blog in, so that we're doing a weekly blog. All of those things have just been an evolution over time, versus I started out doing it exactly the way. It has just evolved, but getting started with it, forcing myself, like painting myself into a corner where I'm like, okay, I got to do a daily podcast. All right, let's start. I got to get interviews. I got to make videos. I got to do this. I got to do that. So it's still, I still have to, sometimes I get behind, and I'm trying to be better about like getting things done ahead of time. And I'm way better at it now than I was when we first started. But had I not started, I wouldn't be trying to perfect it. And that's the thing that I tell chiropractors is, you just have to get started with it. Once you get started with it, if you're anything like me, you won't want to keep doing something that's ineffective. You won't want to keep doing something that's poorly done. So you'll just eventually like start to get better and better and better at it. And then that's when you start to get results. But you got to stick with it. You got to be consistent with it. And find the thing that you like to start with. So if you like writing, start with the blog. If you love being on video, do that. If you like interviewing people, start with the podcast. Start with one, then expand out. So like we started with video. Like I've been doing video for a long time for my office, so that was never a problem for me. Then I added in the podcast for this, and so now I've got video and podcast, and now we're going to start doing the blog. So now we're going to, and there might be things that we add on in the future, but the only way that you're going to start perfecting is if you actually start doing and kind of screwing up and looking at the metrics and seeing, what people have liked, what they haven't, kind of listen for feedback for it. So hopefully this helps. Get started. Don't be a perfectionist like I was, that like keeps you from doing stuff. And if you need any help, let me know, and we can talk more about that. All right. Hope you guys have a good one, and we'll see you on the next one.